Well, breaking in the past half hour, President Biden invoking the Defense Production Act to address the shortage of baby formula. He's also launching a new program authorizing military flights to import formula from overseas. It has been nearly impossible for many parents to find the specific formula they need since the shortage started. 2 children now hospitalized in Tennessee because of the issue. And NewsNation's Brooke Schaefer has these breaking details from the Biden administration. Brooke.
Yeah, Nicole, the Biden administration has been under increased pressure to up the supply of baby formula here in the United States. So just about 30 minutes ago, the Biden administration announcing that now suppliers will need to first ship resources to manufacturers who make baby formula. So this will make the production of baby formula a priority here in the United States, hopefully fill up those shelves for parents who are desperate across the country. Like you mentioned, that was just one of 2 things the president just announced less than 30 minutes ago. President Joe Biden also launching something called Operation Fly Formula. The Biden administration saying this will allow the Department of Health and Human Services and the Department of Agriculture to fly overseas, pick up baby formula that meets U.S. health standards, and bring it back here to the United States. This is something that we did during the early months of the COVID pandemic. It'll let the formula bypass those regular routes. It'll let that baby formula get here even faster. And this is very good news, Nicole, especially for those parents we have been talking about for days now. Parents who are desperate and concerned. I actually spoke with a doctor this afternoon here in Miami who said he has some serious concerns for a specific group of babies across the country. Babies who have specific medical needs or maybe serious allergies, babies that can't switch back and forth to a different type of formula. He said if those babies don't get the formula they need, they could get very sick and end up in the hospital. Nicole?
Yeah, certainly worrisome when doctors are concerned. All right, Brooke, thank you for that. Well, these moves expected to help parents, but in the meantime, of course, the shortage putting infants at risk, as we just talked about. Dr. Jessica Shepard joining us now. So, Dr. Shepard, we hear this breaking news. What is your reaction as a doctor? Does this help right away?
Now, it doesn't help right away necessarily, but what we're really looking for is some type of action and answers. And when we think of this shortage, there are so many people that are impacted, and we really need to have an answer in how they're going to get the resources that they need in order to feed their children, their infants, and in some cases, even children who cannot absorb certain nutrients and have to rely on formula.
All right. So, if a parent right now, I guess, is forced to change formulas because they really don't have any choice, what are some of the health effects on an infant of doing that? What do parents need to look out for?
Well, I think first and foremost, what we need to relay is that use of homemade formulas is not the way to go. The American Academy of Pediatrics have really placed a stance on not relying on any recipes that may be seen online, because infants really do have a specific balance of nutrients that they need. And when that is disrupted, we really have to take into account that this can lead to severe diseases and even death. So when we think of what are the alternatives are for any other formulas that are on the market, that may be a necessity for parents who can't find certain formulas, and also talking to their healthcare providers about alternatives so we can make sure that the need is met safely and healthy.
Dr. Shepard, so far we've heard about these 2 babies, these 2 infants hospitalized in Tennessee. Right now, not hearing of any other cases doesn't mean they're not out there, but what do parents need to be looking out for? What do parents need to know that, maybe it is time to take the baby in to see a doctor, or maybe even to the emergency room?
Yeah, that's a great question, because there are certain things in infants that they may tolerate more than what an adult would tolerate. So, for example, if they have a fever, making sure that you're monitoring that, and also how they may appear lethargic and the ability not to have certain activities that they may have done in the past. The important thing is that if you're unsure, to make sure that you call and ask these questions and not second guess yourself. And especially if there is a severe shortage, making sure that you're not diluting the formula in order to get the amount that you need. That's also very dangerous as well. So paying attention to your child and knowing their previous activity and what they're capable of, and if there's any changes in that, to either take them into the pediatric office or call the doctor.
Well, last question for you. Of course, COVID has been in the news for 3 years at this point, and we talk about, long haul COVID, some of the lasting effects of getting that virus. And with this formula shortage, do you think that there could maybe be some long-term effects that this pool of babies maybe could face as they get older?
Absolutely. When we think of nutrients from infancy to childhood to even, adolescence, those change over time. And one of the things that this is so important is for malabsorption. Can that impact the gut? Or even from a heart issue, or even from the brain. So there are some things that we need to worry about and make sure that if anyone had any severe medical issues, conditions, or even being admitted to the hospital because of this formula shortage, is to make sure that there's long-term follow-up and making sure that there's no long-term sequelae.
All right, some excellent knowledge from you, Dr. Shepard. Thank you so much for that. We appreciate it. Thank you for watching. Click the red subscribe button below so you can get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.